Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you for being with me again today. As you probably know, there were three foreign fighters caught by the other side, which is the Russian side, and they were charged with terrorism and being mercenaries and then attempting to overthrow a government of another entity, country, territory, however you want to call Lugansk and Donbass and Donetsk. I don't know under what jurisdiction they are at the moment. But nevertheless, they were charged and convicted for with a death penalty and in front of a firing squad. Now, obviously, the Western mass media and the politicians and their organizations. I'm saying their organizations because they, I think, work mostly on their behalf. Started yelling, crying, and starting little by little calling names, and they will accelerate that. Will you know start calling different kind of names as time passes because they have these three fighters have 1 month to appeal the court's decision. And as I said, in about 3 weeks and a half, is going to be all these calling names. And then after that, we'll try to make a deal in the last 3 days before, I don't know when the sentence will be, implemented, or how you want to call it. You mean that? So we have here the Russian foreign minister, Lavrov, who will say his part regarding the issue. And those three fighters were considered by their side as fighters or in the Ukrainian army, volunteer, no terrorist, perfect human beings, and all that thing. So let's see what Lavrov says. These are official things, not hearsay. That's his state. So that means this is the mindset. Reuters, June 10th, 2022. Russia's Lavrov says Britons and Moroccan sentenced to death committed crimes in Donetsk. Okay, that's what he says. As I always says, investigation and charges, conviction, and then punishment. It seems like all that was done by the Russians, like the Ukrainians do and did with the Russians prisoners of war or whatever, the fighters. So if those were legitimate, why aren't these legitimate? Because they're the bad dudes. Okay, my bad. Got it. So Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said on Friday that the two Britons and one Moroccan sentenced to death on Thursday in the Donetsk People's Republic had committed crimes on the territory of the self-proclaimed state trying to break away from Ukraine. Lavrov said, and I'm quoting, "At the moment, the trials you mentioned are being held on the basis of the legislation of the Donetsk People's Republic because the crimes in question were committed on the DPR's territory. The DPR, where separatist forces began a military campaign to break away from Ukraine with Moscow support in 2014, because of the violent overthrow of the legitimate government of Ukraine of 2014 with the help of foreign interests and agencies, then okay, we should mention that to balance what these guys are saying, is internationally recognized as part of Ukraine among United Nations member states. Only Russia recognized the entire Ukrainian province of Donetsk, much of which remains under Ukrainian control as the independent DPR." All right. So Lavrov said, well, it was investigated by the authorities of the territories where they operated, and they determined that they committed crimes. So this is the decision of those authorities, and so be it. Now, was it fair? I don't know. Should an international not tribunal? I don't like the name tribunal because when I say tribunal, it gets me to Nuremberg trials, and that's that no. All right, so it's international investigation, international observers, and all these people. But if that would be the case in this context, then that should be the same in the Ukrainian context. But you can say, well, these are not recognized entities, but Ukraine is. Yeah, that could be a point, and I understand that. But under this under the reality on the territory, those territories are not Ukrainian anymore. Taken by force, illegally, however you want to call that. The fact is, they uh, consider themselves independent, right? They said they are, and the self of right of self-determination should be respected, right? Referendum, voting, things like this, the decision of the leaders. It's like, for instance, in 2014 in Ukraine, when the new leadership took shape after the violent, illegal overthrow of a democratic government, it was recognized immediately by first the countries who helped with their shoulder, you know, and with intelligence and other sources uh, supported this. They were recognized immediately, the new government. Not recognized by Russia and others, but recognized by the United States immediately as legitimate. So how about this one? If that was an overthrow, which was like a takeover, forcefully, the takeover of power without a vote, that starts the illegitimacy from then on. And then the same thing here. If these guys were taken forcefully by Russia, then and they declare they are independent now, should fall under the same category. And everything that passed occurred after that. Oh well, they were democratically elected after that, right? Well, I mentioned this example in a previous video. Is like in a monarchy. Uh, if you have a bastard son, he can't be the ruler because he's a bastard. He's an illegitimate son made with someone of a different, of a lower class, and that's how the rules were, and I think still are. So if they're not, then that means they lost virility. So then if you have a bastard son who takes the power somehow, he would be perceived as illegitimate. But since you have power, what can you do? Because he's going to take care of you. So you have to accept that. Now that illegitimate son who took the power and now is the king or whatever he is, he's going to have offspring, kids. The kids come from the illegitimate, so they are also illegitimate. And their kids will be also illegitimate because everything starts from this illegitimate act of grabbing power, snatching power by force by this bastard illegitimate entity, which should not have been recognized. So the same thing was in 2014. It doesn't matter how many, I don't even know how to do it. It doesn't matter how many elections you had after that illegitimate takeover. Um, because you know why? They organized the elections. So that's why it's kind of like, yeah, but they had elections, so it came back to normality. No, because once you are in power, you have the mass media, you make laws, you sign orders and decrees and so on. So you can channel the system in a such a way that will you're going to have an advantage. That's how it works. So then I have an example of Romania after the so-called, I mean, it was a revolution, but of 1989, the same thing. People in power had the power to channel certain things in a certain way, so they ensured that they won. And it was there were the elections. Yeah, there were democratically conducted elections, but they had the power to arrange certain things, so it was most likely that they will win, not the other ones. So the other ones, you know what I mean? Because it was the outside forces who dealt with that. It was not the Romanians deciding whatever. It was the other guys who decided the revolution as well, and who got directly implicated in that. But it's a different subject. But I'm just giving it as an example. So I think the elections, how Russia could get to its, not Russia, Ukraine could get its legitimacy again. I don't know, maybe under international uh, observer, then the organizers, and a new some elections. I don't know. That would be one way to start it. I can say, okay, now we get the former president of uh, Ukraine that was deposed like that in 2014, who's still alive, and he was what indicted and charged with this and that by the current leaders of Ukraine, the Shmuel and Zelensky. Then you can just say, okay, now everybody come back and we start over. I think fair elections should be reorganized under the observance of impartial outside observant or how something like that. So these guys are, as I said, are the the offspring of that illegitimate king who took power in 2014. Nevertheless, went way around this, but the situation is that Lavrov says they committed crimes in that region, which has a government or a leadership, and they proceeded according to their legislation, and that's it. What are you going to do about it? Nothing, because you can't. Because your sanctions don't work, you have no power. Basically, this is what it says. What do you want? Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.